You're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing the next episode of Season 2 of Star Trek Prodigy called A Tribble Called Quest. I'm Dom Bettinelli, and joining me today on the panel are Father Jason Tyler. Hey, Father.
Hello.
And Jimmy Akin. Hey, Jimmy.
They don't actually name the Tribble in this episode. I don't know why it's called Quest.
I do. I'll tell you in a few minutes. Folks, be sure to listen to the end of the show because we'll have more of your great listener feedback. Be sure to get your very own Secrets of Star Trek t-shirts or other merch by visiting sqpn.com/merch. And I want to tell you about another show on the StarQuest Network you're sure to enjoy called Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World. If you're a fan of Secrets of Star Trek and you're not yet listening to Jimmy Akin's Mysterious World, I think you need to get over right now to wherever you get your fine podcast from and subscribe or visit sqpn.com/mysterious or mysterious.fm. Either one of those will work. Before we get to a Tribble called Quest, do you want to mention to folks, if you're listening to this episode just as we release it, it was just Star Trek Day the other day, a couple of days ago, which is the anniversary of the first episode of TOS that aired, those old scientists. And there's usually some announcements, regarding Star Trek stuff that day. And this was no exception. Paramount Plus announced that they've uploaded the entire first season of Strange New Worlds to YouTube, as well as every first episode of every Star Trek series to a YouTube playlist. I'll put links in the show notes, or you can just go to the Paramount Plus YouTube channel. I'm sure you'll find it there. So if you haven't yet experienced Strange New Worlds or, I was going to say Discovery, but why not?
Skip that one.
Or any of the other Star Trek series, this is a great way to get into it. Or if you want to introduce someone to Star Trek, this is a great way to introduce folks to all of those series. So, but it's only until I think the 13th of September. So be sure to hop on that right away. So before we get into the recap, just to explain why it's called a Tribble Called Quest, it has nothing to do with the content of the episode apart from a Tribble. There's a band called A Tribe Called Quest. And apparently someone on the writing staff is a fan. So they've decided to make a Tribble pun out of it. So, but with that said, Jimmy, can you give us a recap of A Tribble Called Quest?
This week, Chakotay and the kids go in search of some unobtainium so that they can create a new star to power the protostar's special protocore drive and get back to Voyager. The trip takes them to a planet that has been stripped bare by Tribbles. They also meet a Klingon scientist whose research on the Tribbles made things worse. They're now giant, voracious, and have teeth. Rock instantly sees what the scientist did wrong and creates a retrovirus to return the Tribbles to normal size. Unfortunately, she also sneezes into a cell culture dish, and the result grows into Sonic the Hedgehog. To get the unobtainium, they must go into the heart of a Tribble hive. There, they are menaced by the giant, voracious, toothy Tribbles, but Sonic the Hedgehog uses his sonic powers to get them to back off. The kids get the unobtainium they need, the new star gets created, bringing the protocore online. It also turns out that Rock's retrovirus worked and returned the Tribbles to their normal size, and the kids take Sonic the Hedgehog with them on their way back to Voyager. The end.
Father, your overall impression of this one?
I was a little disappointed. I guess, being a Tribble episode, I had some higher hopes of comic value and a little bit more of an entertainment level, sort of like what happened with Deep Space Nine, Tribble episode, or of course even the original one. So I was a little let down that we didn't have much of that. On the positive side, I like the interaction between Chakotay and our heroes. He seems to be taking the place of what Holo Janeway did in the first season as being sort of the guide and the one providing a lot of exposition for what's going on.
Yeah. Jimmy, how about you?
Yeah, I thought this was an okay episode. I didn't think it was anything to write home about. It wasn't as funny as normal Tribble episodes. I did like the continuing exploration of the theme of Tribbles, these cute little critters, as the arch enemies of Klingons.
That was good, yes.
Yeah, I like the name drop of Chancellor Martok from Deep Space Nine. And I like the interaction of Chakotay with the kids. He seems to really be fitting in well and to have kind of achieved a comfort level as sort of the adult in the room with these kids. There was also some nice character development for Dal, where he was able to do some stuff competently and get props for that from Chakotay.
I have to say, I was going to say the same thing about, I like the fact that one of the things that they established from the beginning with the Tribbles is that these cute, furry, innocent little things terrify or disgust or whatever you want to put it, these warrior race of Klingons. It's like this, it's this contrast that makes it so funny. And I do love that. Although I don't love the fact that they've made them actual, the great thing about Tribbles is that the only thing that makes them a threat is their reproduction. But this, they make them, scary as in a violent threat. They and I don't love that change to the Tribbles. I prefer the original idea. Is they're just a furry little ball of fluff that threatens you just by the sheer weight of its reproduction. They're bunnies, essentially, right? I mean, they're sort of space bunnies. So that's the one downside. I did love the mention of Martok as well. Martok is, I think, my favorite Klingon of all. I just think he's the best Klingon. He's certainly better than Gowron, which is with his bulging eyes. But I always thought Martok was the best of all. He represented the best of Klingon in his character. So
one of the things I liked about this is we got to see the actual threat that Tribbles pose, because we see a world that has been stripped bare by the Tribbles. We were told in Deep Space Nine that they were an ecological menace. They could just consume any ecosystem. And that's what they've done here to this planet. I mean, there's basically nothing left for them to eat. If you think about it too hard, I mean, are they cannibalizing to keep going? But they stripped this world, and that's impressive to see.
Yeah, that reminded me of when you hear about people bringing in goats to eat up all their vegetation, their invasive vegetation or whatnot. I had a first who did that and said, yeah, it looked like a lunar landscape after the goats had come through and eaten everything up. So, yes,
ask Hawaiians about people bringing pigs to the islands. That sort of thing. The introduction of these species without natural predators. And then the Klingon scientist comes along and makes it worse, which is I guess the humor in this is, one of the things they've established about Klingons is the warriors are at the apex of society and other professions are sort of looked down on, including scientists. But even a Klingon scientist has a sense of honor and duty. One thing they kind of skipped over is they're thousands of light years from the Alpha Quadrant. Now, why is there a Klingon scientist this far? I
don't know that they're thousands of light years from the Alpha Quadrant. I mean, Voyager's only 3,000 light years away, and the galaxy is 100,000 light years across. So a quadrant is going to take up, a quarter of that radially, and so a given quadrant is going to be 50,000 light years to a side.
Right. But they said that, to travel, the Voyager thing was, I forget how many light years the original Voyager was, 75 years to travel.
Yeah, it was 70,000 light years. And now they're only 3,000 light years away from Voyager, which is near Earth.
Yeah.
They should all be in the Alpha Quadrant.
Right.
Or the Beta Quadrant, since the Alpha Quadrant stupidly goes through the middle of the solar system on the Star Trek maps. It ought to be Earth ought to be dead in the middle of the Alpha Quadrant, but for idiotic reasons, the map makers that the shows have been relying on put the division between the Alpha and the Beta Quadrants right down the middle of the sun from the galactic center, which means half of the year the Earth is in the Alpha Quadrant and half of the year it's in the Beta Quadrant, which makes no sense.
It doesn't make. Yeah, I wonder who made the map. So, was it someone on Earth? Are we being human centric again? So yeah. So, and it just so happens that this is the one place that they can reach relatively quickly to get the unobtainium, which they call bosonite.
Bosonite. Yeah.
Is it
Presumably,
made of bosons?
all standard matter is made out of bosons. Bosons are basically like protons and neutrons.
Yes, right. They're subatomic particles.
Yeah, that was one of my notes here. Have we heard about bosonite before? Or is this the first time it gets this explicit call out in a Trek episode?
I think it might be. It's probably. I mean, unless they mentioned it in a previous Prodigy episode discussing the protostar that they need to recreate. Yeah, I don't see a specific.
If there's not one on Memory Alpha,
but not bosonite.
Yeah, if there's nothing on Memory Alpha, it probably we hadn't heard of it before.
Yeah, or it's the only references to this episode. So yeah. So right off the bat, they all beam down. I'm not sure why, and they don't land the ship, which is another interesting thing because they regularly land the ship, the protostar, to do things. So I'm not sure. I guess we wanted to have ship separation. We wanted we talk about TARDIS separation in Doctor Who. This is sort of ship separation. They don't have the ship to run back to do things.
It doesn't cause them any problems though. I mean, when they hit a problem and Zero gets injured, they just beam him and Jankum back up.
Right. They have this Tribble launch that Zero gets run over by, and Jankum is freaked out too, so they both go back up. So I think we're starting to see Zero's
degeneration,
fake body, starting to degenerate, which is interesting. My guess, just to predictions, is we're going to see by the end of the season, Zero having to either make a choice about giving up the body, or being forced to give up the body and go back to his containment unit, and we'll get the old Zero back. That's my guess, but they could go a different direction.
I think we're going to get something else because Jankum is a cyborg, and that's the key purpose of him being in that scene in the sickbay with Zero, where he explains to Zero when his body has failed, he's just built something better, and he shows off his mechanical arm, and Zero picks up on that idea. So I think we're heading to Zero's going to get a better body somehow.
Right. You're right. I forgot that little exchange there between them. Yeah. So a new cyber. I always wondered, why does Zero have, I'm going to guess maybe it's going to be a cross between the old containment unit, but the containment unit is going to look like the new body or something along those lines. That might be more likely. So we get this Klingon scientist that they run into. I don't remember
Dr. Kruvang.
Thank you, Kruvang. And he's basically a biological weapons scientist, right? I mean, is he, no, he was trying to find a way to stop them,
Tribbles.
But the Tribbles, but instead came up with a way. Basically, his mistake was made them worse, which is a genetic engineering no.
And rather implausibly, Rock immediately sees what his problem is that he's spent years trying to figure out. And she just looks down and says, "Oh, it's this protein."
Yeah, I mean, I suppose that's a callback to the first episode of the season where we saw that Rock at the Starfleet Junior Academy. She was referring to the events of that short trek we talked about before, and had figured out a way to make Tribbles less hungry or to sterilize them. I forget what exactly it was.
Incidentally, that short trek, it plays an interesting role in, I guess, the lore of Tribbles, because they have this phenomenal reproductive ability. I mean, Dr. McCoy back in the original series told us that they were born pregnant. And so what on earth, if you think about it in evolutionary terms, what on earth would cause the development of a life form like that? And the only thing that would make any sense is, if this is a natural ability, is their home planet must have some amazing predator or set of predators that they are forced to breed extremely rapidly in order to keep their species in existence. That's why rabbits are what rabbits are. Rabbits are basically the cheeseburgers of the lower animal kingdom. They're they're vulnerable. They're easy to eat. There's loads of predators wanting to eat them, so they got to breed real fast. And so there must be some native super predator for tribbles, unless this isn't a natural ability. And that's what that short trek established, was that their reproduction is actually is the result of genetic engineering. So there is no natural predator for these things other than every predator that's ever existed.
Right.
Because tribbles are basically cheeseburgers too.
Yes. In one sense, this does recall that animated Trek that we've already discussed on this show, More Tribbles, More Trouble.
With the Glommer.
Yeah, Cyrano Jones finds the Tribble predator, the Glommer, but so it kind of actually reminds me of this episode. Reminds me of that in some ways. But you're right. I mean, the Tribbles are themselves already a genetic and engineering mistake. So we're sort of compounding that error. Yeah.
And Klingon scientists have a really bad record at working with genetic engineering by this point, right? They had the augments back in Enterprise, and now they have this. And
there was that whole era where Klingons looked human because of Klingon genetic engineering mistakes.
Exactly.
That's right. But we don't talk about that.
Not with outsiders.
Not with outsiders, right. So in the meantime, we have this sort of interlude scene between Majel and Gwyn on they're hanging out on top of the bird of prey, the Klingon scientist Kovang's bird of prey, and Majel is confiding to Gwyn, how she's worried about the promising future she gave up, this career that she presumably has now sunk by this deception and going off, AWOL basically from Voyager, because Wesley said everyone's future depended on her going, and she sort of took a leap of faith there, which is a giant thing for especially a Klingon to do. It's not necessarily logical, or maybe it is. And then and at the same time, Gwyn is worried about getting back to Solemn and fixing it. We still have this issue of the other Solemnite, the Valnakat, who came from the future, was undermining her and all that sort of stuff. That's all still Sensia. Thank you. So that's all still unresolved. And so it's nice that they're kind of taking a moment to remind us, like, by the way, don't forget, we still have all of this that needs to be fixed and is ongoing, that we need to get back to. So I do appreciate them sort of make sure to remind us we haven't forgotten that. It's not a loose thread. We haven't forgotten that loose thread. So I do like that. So
there's not a lot that happens. We've already hit the major points in this episode. There's not a lot that happens in this one. A lot of it is taken up with, a lot of it's exposition, and a lot of it is little moments of reflection, like the ones we mentioned with Jacob and Zero and Majel and Gwyn. There's also a kind of moment that's reminiscent of the movie Alien, only played for kids, where, after the chest burster scene in Alien, they find the thing that just burst out of John Hurt's chest in the lab. And we have a moment that's kind of like that in the dark in Dr. Kruvang's lab, where Sonic the Hedgehog has, gotten out of its petri dish and they're hunting it really fast. It's in the dark and they're trying to catch it, and it's zooming around and we're not seeing it effectively, because it's so fast. And it reminded me of that scene from Alien, only played for kids. But that's pretty much it. I mean, we have an extensive sequence in the Tribble hive where they're being menaced by the Tribbles, and at one point, they're getting the unobtainium, which they've beamed up what they need. But then the Tribbles are menacing them, and they had to use these special pattern enhancers that with these poles that you put in a triangle around what you want to beam up. We first saw them in Next Gen. They used that to get the unobtainium, but then the Tribbles disturb those rods and they knock Dal and Gwyn out from among the middle of the rods, and so they can't just beam them up because their patterns are not enhanced. And at that point, Chakotay orders the kind of fallback team that was watching to go try to rescue Dal and Gwyn. And that team includes Rock and Murph and Dr. Kruvang. And Dr. Kruvang, at a certain point when it looks like they're just going to be eaten by the Tribbles, he wants to set off the remaining unobtainium. He wants to die with his enemies rather than lose any more face. And so Rock and Murph have to tackle him and get the disruptor away from him and pitch it away. But so we got a little action sequence there, but that's kind of about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I had fun coming up with names for things. So you call him Sonic. I called him Bribble because he's a Brick-R Tribble mix. So I wonder if we'll see the Bribble in future.
No. I'm sure we will because they took it with them.
Yeah. But
you said because he's a mix of what?
Brick-R. That's what Rock's species is.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. And then I had a reference to the GMO Tribble Chow, genetically modified Tribble Chow.
Well, and Dal names it a Bribble in the in the episode itself.
Right. That's true. He does. Yeah, it's not my original thing. There is a nice moment where Majel, because it's a kid, aimed at kids, a show aimed at kids, Majel reassures Rock that making a mistake doesn't mean she's dumber than she thought she was. That just one error does not a disaster make necessarily, or doesn't ruin everything. So she reassures her, which is a nice message for kids and adults, frankly. Any other notes on this one, Father?
Just a couple small things. One is Chakotay mentions at one point Quattro Triticale, the grain that was in the original Tribble episode, the Trouble with Tribbles. And then, when we saw that this Klingon scientist is there by himself with an entire bird of prey, not a shuttle, not a roundabout, but an entire bird of prey, I thought we were going to get a story about how he was part of a team of, a couple dozen scientists and everyone else had been killed at one point, but we never really get any explanation about why he has this entire bird of prey himself there.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, I wonder, is it automated?
Yeah.
How about you, Jimmy? Any other notes?
No, although I did like the reference to Quattro Triticale. Incidentally, Triticale is a real thing. Triticale is a hybrid of wheat and rye that was first crossbred in the 19th century in Scotland, I believe. And so Quattro Triticale would presumably be like four-lobed Triticale or something like that. And so it would be the Quattro would indicate its amped up food production capacity.
Right. In fact, I think in the original Trouble with Tribbles, they kind of mention the idea that it was an amped up,
to feed
high yield.
Feed Sherman's planet or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Very good. So, all right. And I do like the fact that we stayed on the mission. I mean, this was part, it wasn't necessarily too much of a distraction from the main mission, which is they're there to get the bosonite to get the protostar drive running again.
And the Tribbles are a plot complication, but they still make forward progress on the overall plot in this episode. They get the star they need back.
Exactly. All right. So I did mention we had some feedback, and this comes from way back at the very end of the second season of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, which was called Hegemony, that episode. And on YouTube, Truly Awesome New Mexico Catholic writes, I just finished season 2 of Strange New Worlds. Great review, guys. I think this may be the best season 2 of a series. Mostly because the early seasons often are the worst parts of a series. So that's true. That can be laid at that doorstep. But,
the only one that didn't really hold for was the original series. In the original series, the second season, the first and second, but I think especially the second were the best. And every other Star Trek series, the second season, it hadn't gotten good till after the second. It hadn't gotten as good as it's going to get until after the second season. Voyager could be an exception to that. I'm not Voyager. Discovery could be an exception to that.
Right.
Second season was better. Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah. I mean, I was thinking of all of them. The third season, the second half of the third season of TOS was the worst part of TOS, the Spock's brain and those episodes. But yeah, I mean, TNG definitely fits that pattern. DS9 was good out of the gate, but it really didn't get great until...
It got really good in season 4.
Yeah, right. And then Enterprise didn't really hit its stride until its third season 4. Yeah, fourth season. And then met its early demise. But yeah, you're right. Okay, thank you, Truly Awesome New Mexico Catholic, for the comment. Now, we'd like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create The Secrets of Star Trek. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue The Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at StarQuest, and you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us this time. What did you think of a Tribble called Quest? You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek, our Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, send an email to trek@sqpn.com, visit our Discord community at sqpn.com/Discord. You can actually leave a comment on Spotify, where you can also enjoy the show in video form. And you can watch The Secrets of Star Trek on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/StarQuestMedia. We'll be back next time, and we'll be discussing the next new episode of Prodigy called Cracked Mirror. Until then, Father Jason Tyler, thank you for joining me and sharing The Secrets of Star Trek.
Thanks, Dom.
Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Thank you, and kapla.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Trek on StarQuest. And remember, before the right answer, we often find the wrong one, but the wrong one can lead us to entirely new discoveries.